The Boston Bruins made 6 picks at the 2022 NHL Entry Draft, one of which I am personally very excited about, and I'm going to break them all down on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome to this rare Sunday episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be, as well as take a look around the NHL. Thank you for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day, free and available wherever you get podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Recently crossed the 500 subscriber mark on the YouTube channel. Thank you to each of you who has subscribed, and please tell a Bruins-loving person in your life about the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. If you're on Twitter, Instagram, you can find the Locked NHL Bruins account at that handle, at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my dad jokes, hockey tweets at Ian C. McLaren. Now, the 2022 NHL Entry Draft took place Thursday, Friday. Today is Sunday, and I apologize for not getting a reaction episode out to you earlier. Those of you who saw on Friday, there was a major internet outage in Canada, across Canada, one of the biggest companies going dark for most of the day, which was ridiculous. And so wasn't able to record, and then on Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday morning, I was out camping with our youngest and middle boys, which was pretty fun. Very sunburnt, a little tired, but ready now to break down the Bruins selections at the 2022 draft, beginning with their first pick, which was round 2, 54th overall. Now, those of you who have been longtime listeners of the podcast would know that I was high on Guelph Storm center Danny Zhilkin. I was also expecting the Bruins to be very interested in Sudbury Wolves center David Goyette. Both of those players were on the board at 54, and the Bruins decided to select another Guelph Storm center, Matt Poitras. 5'11", 176-pound center for the Guelph Storm. He scored 21 goals and added 29 assists in 68 games this past season as a rookie in the OHL. It should have been his second OHL season, but he, along with everybody else in the OHL, did not play in 2021 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So pretty impressive numbers for our boy Poitra in his rookie season. Compare that to Fabian Lysell. He had 22 goals, 40 assists for 62 points in 53 games as a rookie. So obviously higher ceiling, higher skill set as a first round pick. But Poitra, not a reach at all at this selection. The reason I thought the Bruins might take Zhilkin or Goyette, perhaps they are more, they're flashier players. But Poitra, who should be noted, has added 25 pounds over the past 2 years, is considered a very energetic player, and he can shift to the wing if needed. That canceled season, he spent much of his time working on his off-ice development, and he is a bit shorter. He's 5'11", but he put on that muscle. And the Bruins, according to Associate Director of Amateur Scouting Ryan Nadeau, sees Poitra as bringing some versatility. He can play the wing. He's got a pretty good motor. They like his skill level. They envision him playing down the middle. There's some growth left to his game, as there would be expected from any second-round pick. But they were really happy to add him, and he's got an offensive skill set that should help the Bruins out down the road. He's got a lot of work to do. He'll probably be back in junior again this year. But they see him as a driver, someone who has the puck a lot and can make things happen. Poitra said he has a bit of a mix of skill and greasiness. Models his game after Tampa Bay centers Braden Point and Anthony Cirelli. He's a bit of a smaller guy, but he prides himself on the ability to win stick battles, possess the puck, and he's a gritty offensive skill guy. Looking back, I should have seen that coming. The Bruins, of course, value two-way players. They value guys with some grit to go along with their skill. He developed both playing lacrosse during the summer and loves playing lacrosse, loves the contact, a lot of slashing, and he is, looking forward to getting going back with the Guelph Storm. Now, again, I live in Guelph. I follow the Storm. I've covered the Storm. I was high on Zhilkin because, like I said, his game is pretty flashy. And also because he had promised to come on the podcast if he got selected by the Bruins. But that's neither here nor there. But when it comes to Poitra, if you've seen the highlights, he does have a pretty high skill set. But he has that two-wayness that the Bruins indeed value. Same with Brett Harrison, who they selected last year. So I really like this pick. I'm a big Poitra fan on and off the ice. I'm excited to get down to the Sleeman Center this season to watch his progression, hopefully connect with him, to have him on the podcast at some point. Again, there were some players that other people perhaps were a bit higher on, like a Goyette. Callie Odelius would have been a pretty good fit on the blue line. Ty Nelson, who went to Seattle. And then again, Zhilkin, who fell to 77th, the Winnipeg Jets. But again, I really like this Poitra pick. I think he'll fit in well with Boston's vision, their culture, and what they're trying to build. And I do expect that he will be an NHL regular at some point. Now, it could take some time with any second-round pick. But we know the Bruins have had success in the second round, drafting and developing centers. Hopefully there's still some upside with Jack Stanika. But looking back, Bergeron, Krejci, I'm not saying he's those guys, but he's a hardworking two-way forward with the skill to capitalize. And he already displays a lot of pro-level habits and projects to be a very reliable NHL forward with secondary scoring ability. He's not going to be a first-line center. Possibly second-line center. More likely, between second and a third-line guy. Very glad the Bruins drafted Matt Poitras. Before we move on to their other picks, quick word about BetOnline, your number one source for all betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest developments, league reviews, and news, including the ongoing Major League Baseball season at BetOnline, the best spot for all your sports wagering, scores, and news. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action at BetOnline. Thank you so much again for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. Quick reminder that if you have not yet hit subscribe, please do so and never miss an episode of the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. The Bruins did have a third-round pick next on the docket that was acquired from the Calgary Flames in exchange for Dan Vladar. they decided to trade that pick and acquiring the 117th pick and the 132nd pick in return. With the 117th pick in the 4th round, the Bruins drafted Cole Spicer, an 18-year-old American from Grand Forks, North Dakota. He spent the past 2 seasons with the U.S. National Development Program, scoring 20 goals, adding 19 assists for 39 points. And before arriving there, he had an eye-popping 51 goals for the Honey Baked Hockey Club in Michigan. He's a pretty prolific scorer, according to Nadeau. Played a bit down in the lineup this year for the U.S. National Development Team, but they had some top centers ahead of him. He's got an upward trajectory when it comes to skill set and offensive impact. He's headed to the Minnesota Duluth program this fall, and he'll be teammates with Boston's 2019 third-round pick, Quinn Olson, after he had originally committed to UND. Minnesota Duluth does a great job developing players, and the Bruins feel pretty comfortable with the path that they have for him there. Spicer said he's a responsible forward who scores goals, gets to the tough areas, and that's the kind of player the Bruins really value, of course. Later in the 4th round, the Bruins selected Dans Locmelis to round out a trio of centers. He's a left-hand shot hailing from Latvia, 6 foot, 170 pounds, 34 points for Lulea's J20 squad last season. Another kid who's maybe a bit more of a shooter type in the middle, says Nadeau, but the path is there for him to emerge as a viable option for the Bruins sometime in the future. He's just the 5th Latvian ever drafted by the Bruins, joining Sergei Zholtok, Grigory Panteleev, Georgis Puyaks, and Martin Karsams. Sorry if I'm not saying those right. Bruins general manager said they were very happy with attacking the middle of the ice with their first 3 picks. Wasn't necessarily by design, but it's how it played out. They like all 3 players because of their creativity and offensive abilities and growth potential. Development upside to all 3 of them, and they have some creativity to go along with their offensive production as well as some defensive responsibility. With their 5th round pick, the Bruins went to the back end, selecting Gatineau, Quebec native Frederick Brunette. It's a player they've been tracking for a while. He had a big jump production-wise this past season. 46 points in 63 games for the Rimouski Oceanique of the QMJHL. So the Bruins showing they're not afraid or reluctant to draft out of the Canadian junior ranks with Poitra, Brunet. He's added some defensive layers to his game, but he's a really smooth, puck-moving kid with a good frame. And he actually began training with Patrice Bergeron at Laval University last summer. So he's definitely pleased that he has that tie already to the Bruins organization. He's trying to work on his defense. His family, athletic genes. His father was a figure skater for Canada. His uncle Dominic was a freestyle skier. And his brother is an aspiring Olympian as well in speed skating. Not that played into the role, but if you grew up in a competitive household, Nadeau said, a brother who's trying to be an Olympic speed skater, his dad being an Olympian, uncle being an Olympian, you just have that mentality, and it can't hurt to have that competitive drive. The Bruins, round 6, selected a goalie from Winkler, Manitoba, Reid Dyck. He had underwhelming numbers last season, 6-12-1, 888 save percentage for the Swift Current Broncos of the WHL. He was a backup, so didn't quite get opportunities to shine, but he did play for Canada at the World Under 18. And goalie coach Bob Essensa, goalie development coach Mike Dunham, they really can work with him, they believe. Dyck was mentored by his goalie partner, Isaac Boulder, in Swift Current over the past couple of seasons. And Isaac Boulder, is he drafted? Let's take a look here. I'm not sure if he's drafted, to be honest, but Dyck, not that he molds his game, but he enjoys watching Andrei Vasilevsky. He plays very athletic, and he feels that that is one of his biggest strengths as well, his athletic ability. Not that he is going to be the next Andrei Vasilevsky, but he feels they play a similar way. Great skater, great hands, and someone that he's trying to mold his game after. Finally, with the 7th round pick in their possession, the Bruins took Jackson Edward from Newmarket, Ontario. He plays for the London Knights of the OHL. He's got some size, stiffness, bite to his game. London, of course, develops great players, one of the top junior programs in Canada. And he looks up to players like Brad Marchand, Zdeno Chara. The Bruins were his favorite team, or have been his favorite team, and those are some guys that he has enjoyed watching. And while he believes his game still needs a bit of polish, he's quite happy to be selected by the Bruins and to get a chance to develop in the organization that he grew up watching. Overall, Don Sweeney, very happy with the selections that he made at the draft. We're going to talk about his reaction here in a moment. But first, I want to remind you that the Locked On NHL podcast is available in your podcast feeds for a look at league-wide news. And you can subscribe to get expert analysis from our local hosts. So the Bruins didn't have a first-round pick. Don Sweeney said Thursday was a long night. Going in, sitting on the sidelines, seeing all these good players getting picked. Again, he was happy that they attacked the middle of the ice, and they like all 3 players that they took with their first 3 picks. Development upside to all 3 of them. If they wanted to get in the first round, he said it would have required giving up a player off the team right now. One would expect, I don't know who would have been discussed, perhaps DeBrusk. Certainly a Jeremy Swayman would have gotten it done. But they weren't comfortable deleting from this group to add for the future when they're already depleted injury-wise. They traded their first rounder to improve the club. They're happy with Lindholm, that he's going to be with them for quite some time. And he didn't want to take anything from the club at this point in time. He added a bunch of comments on David Pastrnak, Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci. I'm going to discuss that on Monday's episode of the podcast. Wanted to focus more on the draft. And again, they were able to put some depth down the middle, add some creativity, added some size on the back end, depth in goal. Overall, a pretty complete draft. You never know who is going to be available. And overall, they were able to add some players they're excited about for their development camp and where they're headed next year. None of these guys will be pros this next season. Players like Fabian Lysell, Brett Harrison, Ryan Mast that they selected last year will be going back to their respective junior programs and continuing to develop. And it's an exciting time for the Boston Bruins. Ryan Nadeau again saying they really like what they were able to grab, and they see a lot of potential in these guys, and that's what you have to remember from the draft, especially second round picks. Rarely, there's few can't miss players in any draft. You would have thought Shane Wright was one of those guys. Ultimately, the Montreal Canadiens decided not to draft him. He dropped to 4th. Are there can't miss players in the second round, third round? Not likely. There's going to be guys that take some time to develop. And look at Jack Studnicka. He was drafted in the second round. High upside. Hasn't made an impact yet for the Bruins. So these guys probably a few years away. But there's a lot to like about what the Bruins did on draft day. And again, I'm very happy that they picked a Guelph kid. Very excited to watch him closely this year. And when it comes to like their fourth, later picks, it's so hard to say if, when they'll make an impact. Such a crapshoot with the NHL draft. But I really like the Poitra pick for personal reasons, for Bruins reasons. And I hope that it ends up being beneficial for the Boston Bruins. Anyways, that's a really quick and dirty episode of Boston Bruins Locked On Boston Bruins, recapping what the Bruins did at the draft. Like I said, tomorrow I'll be on to talk about some updates in terms of the coaching staff, Don Sweeney's remarks regarding David Pastrnak. Monday as well, Jim Montgomery will officially be introduced as head coach. And probably Tuesday, we will recap what he had to say after meeting with the media. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Again, sorry this is late, but I wanted to get something up. Better late than never. And I hope you are all doing well. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, my friends. And we will talk to you again tomorrow here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.